Good morning. It's a gorgeous morning here today and just waiting to share all this beauty with you. This is the best view we have of Tiberias on these normal strolls and chats. We're pretty close and higher up, so we can see all those modern high-rises very recently built. And then we're right here under this most southerly cliff of Mount Arbel. Normally when we're looking, I think we're looking at this one here. And so we're down further. We're actually at the level of the water pumps that we reach when we get to the end of the road down below beside the lake. You can see the roof of them there. So we're going to start walking back northward, but I'm going to let you see the view, obviously, the sunrise. We have lots of beautiful life here to see. You can see the poppies and these other ones here. You can help me with names. There's just lots of flowers all over the place. And the thistles are promising. People going to work. That bus actually was pretty empty. It's just so fresh, so delightful. We've got very promising conversation this morning, lovely chat. Well, here's some daisies. I didn't see those so far. I understand the word for daisy in Latin is margarita, which is also a pearl. When I got here, there were a lot of doves, pigeons, cooing. So they probably shelter in these cliffs at night time. Just my supposition. It's just delightful. All these rocks are decorated with these beautiful flowers. And then there's so much microlife happening underneath the plants here. Little critters moving around. All kinds of life. The nettles are almost ready for their blooming. We can see Mount Hermon. Not sure how long more if it's going to get better or less clear as the light increases. But it's right there, Mount of Beatitudes, and then behind that defined ridge you can see vaguely Mount Hermon peeping up. It's the biggest extent of it we've seen from this angle, you know. Because that hill of the Mount of Beatitudes, behind the Mount of Beatitudes, tapers down. And there we can see a little bit more of Mount Hermon. Lots of poppies up here, but I'm not going to walk up there now because I have quite a distance to get back from this position. We have very, very pivotal reading for humankind this morning from Genesis chapter 3. You know, this is not literature, this is more than literature. Of course it's literature, but it's much more than literature. There are some texts that have been very decisive to human self-understanding and the gift of revelation, revealing the truth about the human being. We have such a treasure trove in these chapters of Genesis, extraordinary. Yesterday I found very easily actually that link to the talks Pope John Paul II gave about the theology of the body, which I introduced yesterday. And I attached it today to the text that you have. So you have an extra resource, and there's something very interesting about that link. It's in 3 or 4 different languages. Nowadays they're publishing the texts from the Vatican in many more languages. And you have different subsections. So at the very top you will be able to see audiences, which is the category of intervention. Sometimes there are homilies, sometimes there are talks in international circumstances, but the audiences are the Wednesday audiences. And the one particular one that's posted is the 12th of December. But if you look at the top, then the last category is the year, and it's 1979. And if you were to click on that, then you immediately see the list of audiences for the whole of 1979. If you went back and clicked on audiences, you would have a list of all the years, and you could click on 78 or 1980, 81, and so forth, right? So then if you go back to 1979, you click there, you will see all the ones for 1979. And actually the one following is very interesting also for our topic today. But I just wanted to mention that to you for further perusal for those who are inclined to explore these themes, which are extraordinary. Extraordinary themes. One of the concepts that he uses is theological pre-history. So the understanding that is given to us in Revelation about prehistory, before we have historical records. Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob would be history, however vague the data is, the biblical data. We have some very clear statements, but then there's a lot left not mentioned, not described, whereas in the case of Jesus, for example, we have a lot more historical sources and data. Even pagan authors talk about him, and so this is at other sources. Then we have the 4 Gospels, and we have Paul's comments. So we have a lot of contemporary commentary that's complementary and helpful when we look at the fact of Jesus as a historical phenomenon. and then many other records we have in art and history and so on. For example, the Roman persecutions are also historical facts that are documented, and so we have a lot of historical evidence is very close to the time of Jesus, comparatively speaking to many other realities that we take as historical in a critical way in the world's history. And then prehistory is when we don't have documentation to but we have some facts that have been discovered. For example, up here in Wadi Amud, this is Gennesar in front of us, we have a very, very beautiful wadi that works its way northward toward Svat, up there on top of the mountain. And when you go into Wadi Amud, there are some very impressive cliff faces, a little bit similar to here, except that you have them on both sides and you're going through this wadi, this valley. And I'm not knowledgeable about the themes. I just know that the experts talk about this area with the cliffs as a place of early human dwelling. So it's prehistory. We don't have any names of people or any documents or any writing, but there are some evidences archaeologically of presence of human beings, and maybe even in a very, very preliminary way. So this would be prehistory, as well. This is just a very amateur introduction, very light introduction. So I just wanted to say that because the concepts we have in the first chapter 3 of Genesis today are very, very rich and deeply insightful into human reality. So maybe what we'll do is, in a moment, we'll just stop, because I'd like to read some of the text with you, so we have common points to consider and comment as we do our little stroll here this morning in beautiful Galilee. So I think I'm going to perch down here on this rock for a few minutes. Yesterday I was over there in the turn, as far as you can see here on the path, and I was just preparing to switch over to Instagram from Facebook, and lo and behold, I was startled because about 2 yards away from me there was a guy on a bicycle. And he had come along carefully, so he was stopping nicely on time, but because of the turn in the path, I hadn't noticed him coming. I think this is a nice spot. Here we have one of those favorite concepts these days, a late bloomer. This bush hasn't blossomed yet, but it will be coming. Everyone has their time. So let me get out my text here for Genesis chapter 3. And so we're in the first 8 verses of chapter 3. So the serpent, that was very cunning, asked the woman, "Did God really tell you not to eat from any of the trees in the garden?" And now the woman is in dialogue with this strange presence that actually has many different intentions, or very clear intentions counter to the good. And she says, "We may eat of the fruit of the trees in the garden. It's only about the fruit of the tree in the middle of the garden that God said, 'You shall not eat, or even touch it, lest you die.' But the serpent said to the woman, 'You certainly will not die. No, God knows well that the moment you eat of it, your eyes will be opened and you will be like gods, who know what is good and what is evil. The woman saw that the tree was good for food, pleasing to the eyes, and desirable for gaining wisdom. You know, it's amazing. All temptations show the good side, you know. They show something good. It's an extraordinary thing because evil doesn't exist purely on its own. It can't. It needs to be. And that being is created. Then it can be distorted. It can be deformed. But it's always on a base of something good. And so all of our temptations, usually we're never so corrupt that we're asked to do evil, but we have many reasons that seem good to us to want to do the thing. So she took some of its fruit and ate it, and she also gave some to her husband who was with her, and he ate it. It's an interesting thing when we enter into the realm of temptation and doing that which is not right. We seek complicity. We seek others to be with us there. You know, it's not good for men to be alone. We don't want to bear all the responsibility on our own. We want others to share the same lot in which we are. We want to be together with others. And it's not just in doing good. And we have all the associations helping to do good. Come, join us, help us. We're going to look after these sick people. Come, help us. We're going to look after these hungry people. Come, let us go to, I know a man here who went with the group to Turkey when there was an earthquake and he was injured in that. And he was probably in his 60s when he went to help people in Turkey after the earthquake. So there's a great desire to do good together, but also there's a complicity when people combine together to do evil, to do the wrong. It's a very interesting phenomenon we have in our humanity. So she gave some to Adam, to her husband, who was with her, and he ate it. Then the eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized they were naked. So they sewed fig leaves together and made loincloths for themselves. When they heard the sound of the Lord God moving about in the garden at the breezy time of the day, the man and his wife hid themselves from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. When does a child go into hiding? Or a criminal? Or any of us, after doing something wrong that's damaging for others, we get out of the picture. We disappear. We don't want to confront the other. We go into hiding. Yesterday we had also this word that they were naked, but they were not ashamed. And the link I gave you there from John Paul II is a very beautiful study of shame. It's an introduction to it because he goes into it more and more deeply afterwards. And they were not ashamed. They were free in front of each other, free from shame. Their eyes, their look was a look from innocence. But now they have a gaze that's affected by guilt, by having done something that has changed their condition where they find themselves at this time. The eyes of both of them were opened, and they realized that they were naked. And now they cover their nakedness. So in chapter 2, they realized they were naked, but they didn't have shame. So this original innocence, And then to cover up, they made loincloths for themselves. And actually, when the text goes on a little further, we'll probably have it tomorrow, it deals with fear. They were afraid of God, so they hid. That's the reason they give when God says, "Where are you?" You know. So now there's a new element in their relationship. They're afraid of each other. And before, they were not ashamed in front of each other. So there's a tremendous insight here. It's very interesting, you know. I think in every experience of sin, of having done the wrong, somehow, especially when it's the first time that somebody does something wrong, the little child and the cookie jar, that famous example, you know, it says, then they realize, then. And it's a marker of a situation that was beforehand in their heart and mind and soul and their conscience, and a new situation in which they find themselves that's marked by shame and by fear. In a way, a distancing from each other. Here we're touching in a very few words, in an incredibly awesome simplicity of expression, of narrative, some of the deepest experiences of the human heart and mind. It's really fantastic to notice how these inspired authors gave us such a treasure of insight into the human condition. And it's not just something that happened once at the beginning, which obviously had its extraordinary importance and relevance and impact for humanity, but it's also almost like a structure of how it happens in our lives all the time. And that little guy going to be a butterfly. Another one over here. These beautiful red poppies. And so now there have to be new rules, in a way, new modes of behavior mutually vis-a-vis each other that are affected by these realities of shame, of fear, of a changed situation. Somehow a damage has happened. You know, the medical world is still concerned about what the effects of the corona are to our health. If somebody at some point in their lives, we know this from a long time, that had a pneumonia, the possibility of recurrence is increased. The body has somehow been damaged. Or back in the day in the 1960s when a farmer would look for a second-hand car because no farmer would buy a new car. One of the things they did was to check out the car in very great detail, and even they would lift it up and check the chassis to see if there was a crack, because if it had some type of bang accident, an impact collision, then the vehicle could have cracks in the chassis, and you might buy a car that looked very well, but there was major substantial damage inside in the structures that, with the continuing vibration of usage in the future, could very easily lead to serious breakdown and damage. Sometimes we used to see cars out there in the farms that were really beaten up, They had taken a lot of abuse. And if that can happen to our health, our physical health, our bodily health, then it happens to our person as well in our spiritual dimension. But the great news is that, you know what? We have deer up in front of us and cattle. Look at the deer, the whole family of them. Let me see if I can get them for you. The cattle are there, and the deer, they're still running. I saw them, but they're in the rocks up here now. Look, you see a deer running there with her tail, or his tail, whatever it is. Just in the very center of the screen. There's 2 or 3 of them. Wow. Look at that. You remember yesterday or the day before we had the creation of the cattle and the wild animals. And so we have them today. We're catching up. The cows. There the deer go again, look. Up towards the rocks in the very center of the screen. That's amazing because that's quite far away and we can see them with that zoom in. Not sure if we'll see them again now. Beautiful. What a nice surprise. And I came out down here all this path this morning, but the cows weren't visible, so they were further up, and probably the deer were also not, they didn't see me because they would have disappeared quickly. It's a good job we checked out Mount Hermon because it's hardly visible at all to the naked eye, and to the camera it'll be very difficult to see. Look at how quiet the lake is. The Sea of Galilee. So people, I think we're gone over time here. There's a very beautiful gospel scene with Jesus with the deaf man who was also somewhat dumb. He has a speech impediment. And Jesus touches his body. He takes the clay and he rubs his the ears. He puts his finger in his ears, but he takes them aside. He takes them aside from the crowd that's around because he doesn't want them to be a showpiece. He's treating his person in his body with such respect. Our bodies have great meaning, and we're just beginning to see some of the contours of our bodies, their meaning in the presence of others in the social context in chapter 3 of Genesis. But we see that all through. And Jesus will come to speak about, in the beginning it was not so. He uses this expression. Jesus is very aware of this beginning, of this original plan God had for humankind, this original innocence and original goodness. And the good news is that there's redemption, there's forgiveness for sin. And so if a car in the 1960s had a broken chassis, and that was very difficult to fix, if there were some weld marks in there, it was substantially broken. With the mystery of redemption, there's incredible renewal, the new person redeemed. So we are living in a new epoch. There's another then. There's the then of sin, but now there's the then of redemption. He died on the cross for us. He saved us. And this is a great message. It's too much really for just saying headlines like this in this short moment. But there it is. Just a little hint and insinuation, and we'll be talking more about that other days. So people, thank you for joining. Thank you for making this day here special for our conversation, for your comments, for sharing with other people. God bless you. See you later, alligators.